Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ollie Husemeyer. I look after EMEA's Optimize Your Life program and emotional well-being within that. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Ruby Wax here to Google today for our Authors At and Health At presentation. Ruby is a legend. She is a wonderful person. She moved to the UK in 1977, where she both wrote and performed in award-winning shows for the BBC and for Channel 4, including Absolutely Fabulous, which I'm sure you all know very well. But Ruby also has a master's degree in Mindfulness-based Cognitive Behavioral Therapy from Oxford University and has been described as the poster child for mental illness in the UK. 1 in 4 of us will suffer from some kind of mental health issue during our lifetime. And Ruby's written a fabulous book, which we're really delighted to have signed copies of here today. So everybody, please give it up and give a very warm welcome to Ruby Wax.
Ruby, 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 Ruby!
This is so cool being here. I can't tell you, I'm so impressed that I'm here. Well, sorry about being late. Can you hear me? Can you bump it up a little bit? I want to feel like a dictator. Thanks. Sorry I'm late. Okay, traffic and my problems. But I'll talk about that later. So I just want to sort of say why I wrote this book. How did this come out? So here's a little bit of the history. 7 years ago, Comic Relief asked me if they could take my photo for their mental illness fund, right? Send some of the money there because they knew something wasn't right. And I never wanted anybody to know because I don't want to lose my job. So they said, and I thought it was going to be like a little postage stamp size, I thought because the higher your celebrity, the more you're seen on Comic Relief, and mine was going toilet words, so I thought, well, let's just do a little picture here. But instead, to my horror, when I went in the tube station, there was a giant poster of me, and it said, "This woman has mental illness, please help her." And so I was mortified, and I threw myself in front of it thinking that's the only one. But then when I went down the escalator, there was another one. I think it was even bigger. So they were all over London. And so I thought, what am I going to do? So then I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a show and make that look like it's my publicity poster. Savvy or what? Yeah. So anyway, I wrote a show 6 years ago, and I toured it in mental institutions for 2 years because I figured, if you can make a schizophrenic laugh, you're halfway to Broadway. And I think they liked me. There were kind of shouts that weren't even on the human spectrum. And my favorite line was, I was standing next to my husband once, and I was in a serious ward with the metal bars on the window, for the psychopaths. And so one guy comes over to me, I'm standing next to Ed, and he says, "I'm your biggest fan. Which one of you is Ruby Wax?" So that won the award. Anyway, then I started touring in normal theaters, whatever normal is. And so I went to Australia and Africa and America. And it turns out that it's not 1 in 4, it's 4 in 4. We sort of have the same problems. In the second half of the show, the audience get to ask questions. And the questions were exactly the same in the mental institutions as they were in every theater that I went to. Because it's unbelievable with depression, which I have. They used to say you couldn't say you were gay, and then later on, a few years later, you couldn't say the C word, cancer. And then a long time back, you couldn't even say you were a witch. So, so now we have depression, and it's really popular. I mean, it's 1 in 4. So if it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it's you. Actually, their whole row is not good. You're not good at all. Sorry, I didn't mean to point you out, but nobody knows. So my book isn't really about depression, but I just want to clear one thing up. People who don't have it think it's something like you're sad, because your cat died, or it has something to do with mourning or sadness. Those are on the human spectrum. That comes with the human package. We're supposed to feel that. But let me make it, even though the word is deceptive, depression has nothing to do with being sad. nothing to do with being sad. It's like being in a coma, but you couldn't wake up. So there's no sadness. There's no nothing. It's like somebody opened a little hole in your head and then filled you with cement. So even to move your hand is like it's like doing a triathlon. You can't. You're not at home, and so so people. Of course, you can't tell anybody, because the good thing about this disease is shame comes with it. So you get a double whammy, because your friends say, well, come on, I know people with real diseases. Show me the lumps, show me the x-rays. So you get, these abusive voices, but you don't get one abusive voice. You get about 100,000 abusive voices. Like if the devil had Tourette's, that's what it would sound like. So basically what I'm saying, this is the real McCoy. It's like being pregnant and not being pregnant. It really isn't, because you had a bad hair day. And the horror is you have to pretend, do a sick imitation of who you used to be. And they can't see that you're dripping in sweat, and in full terror. But, okay, the other people tell you to perk up, perk up like I didn't think of that. So in my case, who thought of that one? In my case, I wasn't, I always thought when you have a depression, it'd because a deep Kafkaesque existentialist revelation. Kafkaesque, I couldn't even say it. Or that maybe Cate Blanchett would play me and she'd win an Oscar. Or I'd Sylvia Plath it over to my oven and try and steam fry my head. But no, when I had it, I couldn't leave a chair for 3 months. I mean, I had it as a kid. This isn't something that suddenly comes up. But back then, nobody knew what it was called. And my mother, by the way, they really didn't know it was called, what the name was, even though she screamed through most of her life. Everybody said she was having a change of life. Yeah, for the last 87 years. So anyway, I couldn't leave a chair for 3 months, and everything is scary when you're sitting there, especially the shower. Anyway, I got over it, I got better, and then what I was so interested in was not just how mental illness works, but how the rest of, the 4 and 4 works. And so I just went back to the questions they answered, and I thought, I'm going to check into this, because this is fascinating. So, for example, first of all, none of it's our fault. Evolution didn't really prepare us for this. It didn't know this culture was coming. So we're, the 21st century, we're not ready for, because it's too hard and it's too fast and it's too full of fear. I mean, we don't have the bandwidth. So, for example, there's too much bad news coming in, but, I don't even have to watch TV for this. It's a meme. It's coming in any orifice. I don't have to look it up. So, with my own, your brain can't tell if there's actually a predator right behind you or something is happening 20,000 miles away. So, why should I suddenly care? Or why am I alarmed when there's a 3.6 earthquake in Dong Dong Dong? Or there's a shark attack in Malawi? Why do I have to know this? Because it scares, I'm alarmed. I mean, and then suddenly there's a flood in Dead Brain, Ohio. What can I do about it? Should I get a bucket and a hand pump? We were only supposed to know what our neighbors were up to. So if my neighbor is having sex with the man next door, I should know that. But if it's 4 doors down, really, I don't care. And then the other thing is we're busy. Everybody's busy, but nobody mentions that this is what's killing them. We wear it like a badge of honor. Oh, I'm busy. People ask me if I'm busy. I say, busy. I've had 2 heart attacks. And they go, that's great. You must be, really, you must be doing so well. Busy. And then multitasking, we honor that. That's fantastic. That's like having too many windows open. Eventually your thing is going to crash. So all this stuff that is making us nuts is something that back in history made us sane and kept us in survival. So I thought this is too interesting. So I thought, well, I'm going to go back to school and learn about what the problem is here. Now, I was at Berkeley 200 years ago, but I left one day and I forgot what my locker combination is, and I've had nightmares ever since. What's my combination? Because I left my books there. And I was studying psychology, and I said, someday I'm going to go back to this. But then I got taken over with show business, and I got addicted to narcissism, and it paid well. So I stuck with that one for a while. But then when it was over, I thought, I'm going to go back to this little baby. Because really, what's more interesting than the human brain? I mean, nothing. You know, Brian Cox can look at the stars, but how this thing works is just unbelievable. I don't know why it's not on headlines or it's in the news, how this brain works. I don't understand why everybody doesn't know this information, you know, that we're reading self-help books enough, you know, to cover the equator about 87 times. I'm not going to go into this, but there's a book that's sold 80 million copies. I'm not going to say the name of it. Yeah, it's called The Secret. And the first page, it sold 80 million. First page says the wisdom was handed down by ancient Babylonians. Well, you know how well they survived, because you can't get on the tube without so many Babylonians in there. Unbelievable. If somebody asks me my star sign, really, they're dead in my book. You know, I still nod and say, let's get together, but I've already deleted them. So I thought, well, I'm going to go back to school and learn how the brain works, because when I was at Berkeley, the only way you could look at a brain is if it was dead. So now they can actually see a brain at work. I thought, this is good. So I crashed a course at UCL. You know what that is? Yeah, okay. So I crashed it, and it was filled with 21-year-olds. So I told them I had a disease that made me look really old. And then they found out I really was old. So anyway, but they still liked me because I was the one with the car. So I, you know, eventually they all went off to Yale, and I was left, partly because I hadn't enrolled in it. But I thought, oh, I'm going to trump that ace. So I'll tell you why later. But I got into Oxford, and I've been there for 2 years, and I graduate next week. So I'm going to be wearing the Batmobile. Thank you. Yeah. I thought I'm 87 and a half. It's time to go back to school. So that's what happened. And so we studied things on, you know, why the critical voices. And it really warms my heart to know that everybody has them. This is the first time I actually feel part of the human race. You know, it really, we're all screwed, basically. But not in every sense, but certainly the critical voices, everybody has them. Everybody. I have yet to meet somebody who has a voice that says, oh my God, Ruby, you've done a wonderful thing, and may I say how attractive you are today. Nobody has that one. And there's a reason for it, which I find, you know, it just warms, you know, I feel there was a reason for this. Even though it's a glitch in the human machine, but I know the reason, which is that back in the savannah, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago, we were really well adjusted. Nobody had OCD. There were no panic attacks. Fine. No hysteria. And so when we'd be threatened by a predator, we'd fill up with this adrenaline cortisol, which we'd need to take on the foe. So we'd be killed, or we'd kill, or we'd be lunch, or we'd have lunch. And then as soon as the situation was resolved, we'd go back to, you know, grazing or whatever we did. But nowadays, the problem is when you know, when somebody threatens us, or you feel that fear, again, your brain doesn't know the difference between where it is. So social fear really scares us too. It gives you the same buzz up there. So about 50,000 years ago, good news, bad news, language came online. So we started to put words to those feelings of emergency. Bad translations. You know, all animals are kind of vigilant. They're always looking, you know how your cat's always looking around. He's never cool. He's looking for problems. Well, we're a little like that too, so we put words to it. It's just a guess. So we think, oh my God, I didn't send the email. Oh my God, do I look too fat in these tights? Oh my God, I didn't get invited to the Christmas party. Oh my God, everybody hates me. So we have this kind of, you know, tape that it never goes down. It's like a siren that you can't shut off. And the reason it's negative is because, again, if we had a whistle a happy tune and we feel great, I love the world, you'd be picked off by the next predator or run over with a truck. So for the sense of survival, you need that kind of constant nagging. Part of the reason, though, these words are there is because, again, a social threat is that we compare ourselves. You know, and magazines know that. And it used to be in the old days, you know, you were a peasant, you knew your place. You died, you plowed a little bit, you just think shit happens. But now part of the thing is, in our culture, we think anybody can have that. You know, you see stars or whatever used to have talent, and now anybody can, you know, go for it. So this is also what makes people crazy. You know, you think, why can't I be Beyonce? What's the problem here? And then they show up on X Factor with the talent of a toothpick. So we're in a constant, why can't I be Bill Gates? You know, why can't I sleep 2 hours? Why can't I go helicopter skiing in Courchevel like these big boys do? And by the way, if you meet somebody who does do helicopter skiing for relaxation, walk away, he's insane. Seriously, don't give him, we used to worship these guys, you know, in high school, they made it, they're more nuts than the rest of us. Seriously, I think now that the type or the person that's really the quintessential survivor of the 21st century are those people with Asperger's. Really, they were made for the information age because emotions don't get in their way. They can really concentrate. So we really, the rest of us, have to do something. You know, if we're going to evolve in some way, we have to do something to be able to cope. You know, I'm not one of these people, oh, we're always on the computer, my kids are on video games. You know, tough shit, that's the way it is. So we have to adapt ourselves to it. It's here now, okay? Now we have to work on something to kind of pull the brakes. Because, you know, people blame it on the Muslims, or they blame it on the ice cap, or they blame it on who's prime minister. You know, you voted him in. He didn't fall from heaven. So here's the problem. The problem is in here. Okay, we're the mothers of invention. If we don't stop the conflict up here, there's always going to be war. So that was what was, another thing we all share, I'll just go into this quickly because I find this so interesting, is we got that go-get thing. You know, everybody has that busy thing. Even women in my neighborhood who have nothing to do are booked for the week because they do Pilates 5 times a week so that their pelvic floor is strong enough to be able to lift the carpet. Booked to the hilt, these people are. Booked. But, you know, again, that we wear them. That's our badge. So the reason we can't stop going for it is, again, something that helped us survive a long time ago, because the people that were the most driven, were the ones that survived. They found the food. They were the best foragers. And the chilled out ones died. So we still have this thing about, you know, the guys that are really driven. I mean, I know it isn't for food anymore, but basically it is to get. And the thing about getting is there's a chemical in us that makes us do this. You know, again, there's no puppeteer up there. What's pushing us is this thing called dopamine, which is good because it got me up here and it makes you successful. But again, the problem is nobody can find the brakes. So once you get the hits, here's another problem. We get addicted to our own chemicals. Like, I'm really high on adrenaline. I'll pack my bags when the car comes to pick me up for the airport. Because, you know, that reptilian thing feels really good. Like being late here gave me such a buzz. That traffic was bad, but I was high. People were waiting. So, thanks for making me feel good. And same with dopamine. Like, if it's not even the getting, you know, that's not what the dopamine does. It's the hunt. So that's why there's so many unhappy addicts. It's not about getting your high. It's about searching for the next one. So let's say for the women, you really wanted Jimmy Choo shoe. You really want it, so you get one finally. But the next thing, you've still got it. You're still now looking for shoe-rich environments so that you can get another one. You'll just endlessly go until you go to a dinner party and a woman is wearing them. You'll gnaw her ankle off to get those shoes. It never stops. And whatever we want, you know, we want more. And magazines, by the way, know this. So they make us salivate for the next, like, you know, Sotheby's magazine. People that collect art, you know, they finally get an installation of some semen with a cracker next to it. And they want the next one. That's the way we are. So, so the question is what we can do about it, because that's kind of the human condition. And also, I didn't want to have another hit of depression like I did 7 years ago. I wanted some way to self-regulate and to hear the early pitter-patter before it hit me like a tsunami. So I really said, let's study this one, Ruby. Let's get serious here. So I researched what's the most successful in being able to bring down the cortisol. Okay, it'll never go, and I need that adrenaline, but you know, I can pull it back in order to go better. You know how when you got that red mist in your head, you can't even create. So you got to know, I'm screwed now, let's pull it back. And I thought, there is self-regulation. Again, not in books. I mean, there are academics, but they're very dense. But Mark Williams, by the way, who did write a book called, he was my professor in the end. What's it called? Frenetic. It's a brilliant book. It's about mindfulness. So I thought because I have a lot of dopamine, I'd go to the horse's mouth. So I went to Oxford and I said, I'm begging you, help me, because I was still mentally ill. And he knew something was wrong because I'd smashed into 100 trees on my way there. And he could see the dead shark eyes. So kindly, I don't know why, he said, I'll give you an 8-week course, just us two, and for free. Go figure that one out. He said, unfortunately, if you want to study this more, you'll have to get into Oxford. So again, I kicked in the dopamine, you know, because I have the drive of a Rottweiler. So I got some grades that were respectable, and I didn't tell him my SAT scores, which were that of a houseplant. But I give great interview. I do. So I got it. So I got in, and there were like 16 other big heavyweights who looked at me like they were having an encounter with a third kind, that I was there, so screw them. Anyway, so not only did you learn how this unbelievable thing works on your head, there are no voices. You know, it is 100 billion neurons that are connecting and reconnecting. And the great thing is this thing of neuroplasticity, again, why not in the newspaper? You come in with genes and they determine how long your legs are. Like, I will never go down the catwalk, or the color of your eyes. But in your brain, it's constantly changing. And everything is possible. It's like Play-Doh that keeps moving around. And the reason it is because when you're born, and we're born with hardly a brain, unlike other animals, that's why we need mommy to teach us everything, it's a whole nother story. But the reason we have such an underdeveloped brain is because we don't know what culture we're going to be born in. So it waits to see where you plop out, and then it starts forming, those connections. I mean, if you're born in the Sahara, you'll have a proclivity to get on a camel. But if you're born in New York, you'll need to learn how to do this to pass in taxis. So it's a whole different set of rules, including what your accent is. You're born, everything is possible, but then you start to go, oh, I have to go in, your Spanish, and everything else atrophies, everything dies away. And so your whole life is patterns, and you get into habits. You start seeing the world in a certain way, especially when people get old and everything atrophies. They just see people as they see them. They have their routines. But if you choose to rewire, if you rewire, you have to fire to rewire, whatever. You have to be conscious of doing that. And it's like records caught in a groove, you can move them around. And the way to do that is one of the ways is mindfulness. So do you want me to explain how that works? Okay, I will explain. I was really dubious about doing a course called Mindfulness, because to me it sounds like I'm going to sit on a mountain with a bindi on my head, and I'm not going to worship an elephant with 1,000 arms. That's out of the question. But it's a bad word. It's like depression. But it turns out it's very simple. It's not, you're not praying to the unknown. And you're not emptying your mind, by the way. People go, I can't empty my mind. I can't do that. That's not the only time your mind will empty is when you're dead. Honestly, I promise you this. But if you do, and you have to do it every day, it's like you can't go to the gym and do one sit-up and you got a six-pack. The tragedy is you're training your brain in a certain way. And what you're doing, I'll just cut to the chase. This high alarm means your amygdala is kind of on all the time, and you're creating cortisol and adrenaline pretty much all the time. And especially when you have a business meeting or, your life is at stake. Of course, it's not really, but, you think you're going to lose your job. You're filling with that cortisol and adrenaline all the time, which, P.S., forget that you'll be bad in business. It also leads to diabetes, to cancer, and suicide. So what you want to do is get that little baby down. All right, so if you have that, there's another part of your brain, if you exercise, and again, this doesn't have to be mindfulness, called the insula. And the insula gives you introspection and metacognition. And we all have it. You don't have to go to Amazon. It's like when when you feel like a cramp or you hurt your toe, your brain goes inside so that you know, I can feel something. Whenever you send your attention intentionally to one of your senses, if you have a stomach ache, you go there, because that's already there. But if you feel your feet on the ground, or your ass on the seat, your bum on the seat, that's really there. We're not in fairyland. Okay, if you send your attention to a real sensation, and it could be just listening, because that's another sense, your amygdala automatically goes down, because now the attention is taken to the insula. It's a trick, in a sense. It's like a car can't be in 2 gears. So you're either worried, and your mind is going past, future, which, by the way, is a great thing. Otherwise, again, we wouldn't be humans. We'd be an ape. We need that. But when you cool it down, the words start, the chatter's still going on, but it's more like a radio in another room. And you just acknowledge, yeah, I know you're there. I know you're there. But you're sending your sense. You're sending your attention to one of your senses. I'll tell you how to deal with it when you send it back there. But just to get you into like understanding the differences, let's send it just to listening. Now you can't be anxious and listen at the same time. For example, let's just listen for like 10 seconds. Now your mind will grab you back, because it's been doing that for 30 years, and it really wants to be the driver, not the drivee. So again, this thing, I hate to use this word, it's so hippie, is when you feel or when you listen, it brings you into the present, which is something we don't have. It's a human thing again. You'll have it like suddenly when you're scuba diving, or you'll have it when you're jumping out of a plane. You'll be there. But as far as calling it to you when you want it, you're on holiday and you really want to be there, we haven't got it. So if you practice that muscle of going in, every day a few minutes, or look at something that gives you pleasure on your screen. This doesn't have to be, or a meeting's coming up that's going to scare the shit out of you. Go into the bathroom and just follow your breathing, like 2 minutes. That means when you go in there, you've pulled the cortisol down and you won't screw up, or you still might, but at least you got a chance of having a gap to decide, this guy scares me, I'm going to deal with it another way. So you're breaking your habit. Because that happens to me on stage too, sometimes when I get really scared. And I can tell because my mouth gets dry. The people watching me start to they get bloodthirsty. It must be something primitive, like when there's a runt, at the watering hole, the rest of the pack go and kill it. You can smell my fear. That's just how it is. So sometimes I've never lost a line in the last 7 years when I'm doing my show, but if I feel that I'm, starting to do that thing to please you and my eyes get all slitty, I know it. I mean, that's what mindfulness does. I know I'm losing it. So you have a choice. You could either say, I'm screwed. You can either take a breather, or I send my attention to my feet, and immediately your eyes start to soften, and the fear goes down. I mean, I know it sounds so wacky, but actually, once they can't tell I'm thinking about that, but it means that I'm not so desperate. I'm using that insula. So basically, I hope that you get this, and you can do it with other things, Tai Chi or something. Just running the triathlon isn't going to do it, because eventually you're going to have to hang up your gym shoes. So how you are, your thoughts and your fear and your themes are going to kick you in bite you in the ass at some point in your life. So better you look at it now. I know it seems counterintuitive to go in there and see the mess, but we all have the mess. But by looking at it, straighten the thing, you start to notice that there are no thoughts. It just comes in and goes out, like sound. There's loud noises, so you get that distance, but that takes a few days. But you get that distance, and even in a scanner, they can see that somebody who did mindfulness for 3 days already has that insula going, and the amygdala is coming down, and the cortisol settling down. So, this is something we're going to have to work on in some way, because I really hope in the next 10 years it'll be about it won't be about survival of the fittest, but survival of the wisest. So thanks very much for having me. Okay.